We're going to talk about Operation Economic Outcast. Do you see the? How is it being received in Tehran? Well, we've had a couple of individuals weigh in. The Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, the war must come to an end at some point. The leader of the parliament, no matter how much military power we have, if people are hungry, we don't have financial circulation, economic growth, and domestic production, we will not endure reports of gas shortages causing massive problems in Iran. We also have some positive news. I mean, that's not positive news for the Iranian people, but for the objective here. Positive news in that President Trump was informed by the Navy, reportedly, that all the mines have been removed from the Strait of Hormuz. And he then said Iran has been notified that any ship or boat placing new mines will be immediately and systematically destroyed. Through Space Force, we are watching every inch of the strait, as we are also with Pickaxe Mountain and the already destroyed 3 other nuclear sites. There's a zero-tolerance policy on mine placement in full force and effect. And as we've noted before, the reporting is that with the naval blockade and ostensible U.S. control of the strait, you do have oil tankers moving through the strait, and per the number of barrels that moved through the strait on Friday, almost to pre-war levels, reportedly. So patience is the order of the day. Well, let's ask our friend Daniel DePetris, fellow at Defense Priorities and a syndicated foreign affairs columnist at the Chicago Tribune and Newsweek. Daniel, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Dan. How you doing?
Or should we take those statements from, particular Iranian opinion leaders, if you will, as well as the reporting on the situation in the Strait at face value?
Look, I mean, I think within the Iranian political system, there's a pretty big, slip and divide within them. That you have, I will call them pragmatists, moderates, whatever label you want to call them. But
it's all relative,
as you mentioned
I suppose.
Earlier, less extremist figures. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Iranian President Pezeshkian and the Iranian Parliamentary Speaker Mohammad Ghalibaf. As you mentioned in the opening, they are very, very concerned about the state of the Iranian economy as a whole. I don't think Pezeshkian, for instance, really wanted the war to begin with. His job really as president is to make sure the Iranian people can live a decent enough life on a day-to-day basis. And obviously this war has completely gutted Iranian infrastructure. So there's no doubt in my mind that Pezeshkian and the people in the president's circle would like this conflict to wind down sooner rather than later. The problem, of course, is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has basically captured the state at this point and are making all the big decisions about when to escalate, whether to escalate, and whether it's pertinent to negotiate with the Trump administration to wind this down. So, the Trump will take this as probably a sign that his strategy is working, just because the regime is not as unified as they publicly insist they are.
So at present, given what the president said and what appears to be happening, as I mentioned as I posited at the outset, is patience the order of the day? Is that the proper play for President Trump?
Well, I think that's exactly what he's going to try to do. I mean, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, of course, on Monday unrolled a long levy of economic punitive measures against the economy, targeting not only the oil industry and the banks, but pretty much any country that deals with the Iranians in any way, shape, or form financially. That's something that he rolled out on Monday. So I think the administration is definitely using patience, in addition to heightening, the depth and scope of the economic warfare campaign that they're waging against the economy. They hope, obviously, that this was going to bring the Iranians to some sort of a settlement on U.S. terms. I think that's still to be determined, obviously, considering the IRGC is running the show at this point. But I think the administration is certainly using patience as a strategy right now.
And some
they want.
And some of our erstwhile Gulf state allies, immediately signed on to Operation Economic Outcast. Do we have the ability, in your estimation, to punish those countries that might otherwise try to surreptitiously support the Iranians? I'm thinking of Russia and China in particular.
Yeah, China's the big wild card here, right? I mean, before the war, China bought about 90% of Iran's crude oil, giving the regime billions of dollars they wouldn't ordinarily have. And that was under U.S. sanctions. So the Chinese have been buying crude regardless of U.S. economic penalties. We have the ability, certainly, to target Chinese financial institutions, and we've done that in a very limited way in the past. The question, I think, for Trump is, does he want to kind of overturn the apple cart here with the Chinese? Because he's got a summit coming up with Xi Jinping next month at the White House, and he's also got the trade truce that he signed with Xi last November. He would like that to stick before and after the summit. So the question is, what is Trump's higher priority here? Is it squeezing Iran into submission, or is it keeping the trade agreements with the Chinese afloat? It's a decision he's going to have to make. So it's not a question of will; it's a question of priority.
Returning to the Western Hemisphere, you wrote recently about Cuba, since we're running a couple of parallel tracks, and we've got the Donroe Doctrine in effect in this hemisphere. And Marco Rubio has been sort of routinely commenting on regime change in Cuba implicitly. You wrote recently the U.S. must learn from, that Trump needs to learn from this Iranian experience to date and not make the same mistake in Cuba. What do you mean by the same mistake?
Well, what I mean is basically just getting into a war that he doesn't need to fight. I mean, with respect to Cuba, we don't really need to go after Cuba militarily because they're such a weak country, and frankly, they can't even keep the lights on, right? I mean, they have massive blackouts across the country multiple times a week. So, I think Trump has made that conclusion. I think he's settled on a strategy where military options are on the back foot. I don't believe he's no longer viewing those as sort of the first, second, and third options on the table. He's using, the traditional carrot and stick approach that his predecessors have used, which is basically crank up the economic pressure on the Cubans and keep dialogue open with them, hoping that they open up economically and maybe change their political system. I think they will. I think they can open up economically. Politically, though, it doesn't seem to me the Cubans are particularly interested in implanting democracy on the island. We have 60-plus years of experience attesting to that. So the question, again, is what will Trump be willing to accept from the Cubans? Economic reform, political reform, or both, or something in between? Who knows?
So Rubio has really focused on Gaesa, which is this military-controlled business conglomerate that controls something on the order of half the Cuban economy, according to estimates I've read. Is there a way to bring, Canel and the old guard Castroists to heel by punishing Gaesa in a way that we haven't previously?
I don't think so, and I say that because we're punishing Gaesa right now. I mean, any entity, individual, or company associated with Gaesa is going to be sanctioned by the United States and blacklisted from the U.S. economy. And, the Trump administration has signed an executive order very early in its second term rolling out that policy. So we're doing that. The question is, is that pain going to be so bad and so strong to the point where Cuban political leaders actually decide to negotiate seriously with the United States? We can sanction the Cuban economy every day till the cows come home. That in and of itself is not going to, solve the problem. The problem is Cubans' resistance to U.S. demands, and if we can't get them to push in our direction, I'm not sure how much economic weight we can pull over there.
Is this the weakest Cuba has been since the Castro Revolution, though, with losing their Venezuelan ally and as you say, I mean, not even being able to keep the lights on anymore consistently?
I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah, I mean, when Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro were in power in Venezuela, they provided Cuba about 100,000 barrels of oil per day, and they didn't even charge the Cubans for it. It was basically an arrangement where the Cubans sent them intelligence officers and doctors in exchange for the oil. Obviously, with Delcy Rodriguez now in power and essentially aligning with Washington on a lot of the big items, the Cubans are not getting that oil anymore. Mexico has stopped sending oil to Cuba, and the Russians have sent one tanker of oil in the last 7 months. So there's no question that Cuba is really standing with a limp. They're limping along every day, and they really have no good option but to either basically, keep doing what they're doing, and hoping that the United States basically just tires of its strategy, or accede to what Trump is asking for, which is a lot.
So patience is the order of the day from Trump's perspective here too, it seems.
I think so.
Little Rocket Man back in the news. Trump wants to have a rapprochement with Little Rocket Man. What's the play there?
That's a very good question, and I don't really have a clear answer for you. It's strange. Like Trump goes back to periodically. He goes back to meeting with Kim Jong-un, right? I mean, of course, he met with him 3 times during his first term. Which it was back then. It was a decision I supported just because Washington's North Korea policy has been an abject failure for 30 plus years. So I had no problem with Trump meeting Kim directly. I have no problem with Trump meeting Kim directly today. The question, of course, is whether he's actually serious in doing this or whether this is just one of his, Twitter outbursts.
Box checking exercise. Yeah.
Box checking exercise. And of course, just because you meet with the guy does not necessarily mean that you're going to get a deal that's favorable to what the United States wants. So again, I would be perfectly fine with him going over to Northeast Asia and sitting down with him again. Who knows if he's actually going to do that.
Daniel DePetris, fellow at Defense Priorities, syndicated foreign affairs columnist at the Chicago Tribune and Newsweek. Daniel, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Great to talk to you, Dan. Thank you.
And he joined us on the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
If you're looking to refinance a home after a divorce, you need to call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender.